Learning sponsors Bell and David Adler in memory of her father Eliyahu ben Yosef Kohen. Those who were inspired by Rebbetzin Emeritus Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Stumaka but Mashomi Sacha. Gail and Leslie Kaplan in memory of their parents, Mushka Shprinza bat Yosef Chaim Bachava, Hanan ben Moshe Eliezer Bachana, Pesha bat Shmuel Yitzchak Halevi Vitzipora, Issa ben Yoel Moshe Cohen Bachana. Rexford Friends of Gladys Sherman, Gutta bat Meir, Michael Klein and Friends of Judah Klein, Yehuda Tzvi ben Chaim, Marsha Brana in memory of her husband, Rabbi Achmiel ben Shmuel, friends and family of Arthur Ritholtz, Mordechai Yidl ben Baruch Leib HaKohen, friends and family of Siggy Bethler, Rom Shraga ben Dov, friends of Marvin Weinstein, Mordechai Ozer ben Yisrael Aharon, Sarah Alpert in memory of her husband, Rav Tzvi Lipa ben Hillel, Rexford friends of Maddie Friedman, Mindel Miriam Bat Kalman Ruvain, a month of learning by Susan and Reuben Podolsky, in memory of her father Simcha Bunam ben Yeshua, a week of learning by Leila Bessler in memory of her mother-in-law, Rachel Bat Shalom, by Rabbi Tzvi and Robin Karpel, in memory of his mother Malka Bat Mordechai and her mother Chaya Edel Bat Menachem Zev. Today is the 22nd, right? And therefore we have the following Judy and Keith Zauder in memory of their son Moshe Yechiel ben Chaim Daniel. May the Shemas have an aliyah, Karank Rafiya, Velti Yeshua Shemas Lit, Kol B'nai Yisrael, Avot Ben Shia. So, try to move along today. We are going to start on the bottom of Nun Gimel Amud Beis, right? 5 lines from the bottom. And I've got the right place, hopefully. Right? Okay, so we got to a point where we had a discussion on the second tithe, whether it was where we saw Rabbi, there was a whole argument as to whether a number of series of presentations as to how we could understand the whole concept of what paid to be able to clarify this point about putting money, okay, when you have Masha Sheni that was less than Shava Pluta, what could you do with it, right? And eventually it suggested, comes back to the example that you would have to put it on earlier desanctified money from a previous or from an earlier Masha Sheni. Okay? So having gone through that a number of discussions on that issue, we now come, as I say, to 5 lines from the bottom, in Ba'ilaho. So they ask the following question, right? Chumsha milegav or chumsha milva? Okay, do we say that the 1/5 that's added, okay, when you bring the Maaser Sheni, when the person does it themselves, is this included in what's totally brought, or is this in addition? In other words, it's the principal plus an addition on top of it. Okay? Amar Ravina, says Ravina, Tashma, listen to the following. Ha'ba'alim omrim be'esrim. Okay, let's say somebody wants to regain purchase of land, and they had an earlier claim, and they want to regain their claim. Okay? And so what can they do? They would put a bid on it. B'chol adam be'esrim, ha'ba'alim kodmim. And we say that in this case, while other people could also put bids on that land, okay, those that are owners, okay, they have first, so to speak, first dibs, okay? Mipnei shemosifin chomish. Why? Because they're going to be adding 1/5. Amar Echad, and one of the sages, okay, let's say somebody puts their bid in at 21. What happens as we go now, and we're going to run through this fairly quickly. The owners then have to, if it's an additional 5, and we're trying to prove that that's on top of the Karen, on top of the principal, so it's always going to be whatever the earlier bid is, it's going to be 5 plus that. And that eventually we're going to see is how we're trying to come to the proof that it is always in addition to the principal, right? So Baalim Notnim Esrim V'Sheish. The owners have to put in 26. Okay. Esrim V'Shnayim, if the others put in 22. Baalim Notnim Esrim V'Sheva. The owners put in 27. Esrim V'Shalosh. The others put in 23. Right? Baalim Notnim Esrim V'Shmona. The owners put in 28. Esrim V'Arba. The others put in 24. Baalim Notnim Esrim V'Tesha. They have to put in 25. Only 29, I'm sorry. Esrim V'Chamesh, 25. Baalim Notnim Shloshim. The owners have to give 30. So every time that we see this procedure, okay, this is going to try to prove for us, okay, what we raised an answer to our question as to whether it was milagyo or milabar, to try to prove that was principal plus addition, right? Okay, lefisha ein mosifin chomesh al ilui shelzeh, right? Because we claim here that the fifth is not added to the person's, in other words, it's not included within the amount, but it's added to it. Shmamina, chumsha milavar shmamina. And that's how we're trying to prove that the Karen is one amount and the chumash is a second amount. Ketanan. This seems similar to a machloket tanaim, where based on the pasuk, vayosef chamishito alav. The pasuk basically tells us, and he adds a fifth part of it. Okay, sheyehe hu v'chumsho chamisha. Okay, that implies that it, namely the Karen, and the 1/5, okay, is the fifth. Divrei Rabbi Yeshaya. That's the view of Rabbi Yeshaya. Rabbi Yonatan Omer, Chamishito Chumsho Shel Karen. According to Rabbi Yonatan, the 1/5 it's a fifth of the Karen, of the principal. Okay? So we ask the following question: Chumash Ma'akev or no Ma'akev? Okay, if you were able to pay the Karen, the principal, but not able to add the 1/5, what's the status? Okay, does it nullify or does it hold back your fulfillment of the redemption of the desanctification? Right? Arba ba'arba harik, says the text. Right? Namely that 4 can redeem 4. You can take, let's say, 4 zuz or 4 whatever the coin is, and apply it to the value of the Maaser Sheni, so long as that's what it's worth. Okay, 4 to 4. Okay, va'akanav she mosif chumash, and on his own, namely the one who is redeeming his Maaser Sheni, he has to add the 1/5. Alma chumash lo ma'akev. This would seem to tell us that the addition of the 1/5, okay, does not hold things back, right? O dilma, or perhaps arba b'chamisha parigi, or perhaps we could say just the opposite. That if the Maaser Sheni is worth 4, and it can be redeemed with 5, b'chomish ma'akev, and therefore paying the 1/5, okay, does hold back, okay, the fulfillment of the sanctification. Amar Ravina, this is Ravina Tashma. Listen to the following. Hadmai ein lo chomish. When we talk about demai, which is all of the mixed, okay, produce, a lot of mixed ones, it does not have the requirement of 1/5. Ve'ein lo bi'ur. Not only that, appropriate for today, by the way, right? We're supposed to know that at a certain point of time, when you no longer have that produce growing, okay, when animals can't eat it out and things like that, you have to destroy it, right? You have to destroy it at the end of a certain point, right? Uh-huh. Right? Ha Karen Yeshlo. But that would seem to imply that it would be enough for paying the principal. My Tama, what would be the reasoning? Karen de ma'akev b'deoraita. Ita. All right? So that therefore we're saying that the paying of the principal clearly is a Torah mandated requirement, right? Ita b'rabanan chomesh delo ma'akev b'deoraita. But you have the requirement of paying the additional 1/5 when the person desanctifies his own Maaser Sheni, okay, that is a Rabbanan. Litik the Rabbanan. That is not according to the rest, right? So, Lema Katanai. So we say then this is like a Tanaitic argument. Natanet a Karen, velo natanet Chomesh. What about the situation where a person is able to desanctify the principle, but didn't add the 1/5? Rabbi Eliezer Omer Yochal. Rabbi Eliezer says he's still able to bring it to Yerushalayim and eat it. Rabbi Yeshua Omer Lo Yochal. According to Rabbi Yeshua, no, he can't eat it. Amar Rabbi says Rabbi now says Nir'in Divrei Rabbi Eliezer b'Shabbat. Okay, that it would seem that Rabbi Eliezer's view, okay, is acceptable on Shabbat because we don't require an additional payment on Shabbos. Right? However, the Divrei Rabbi Yehoshua b'chol, but Rabbi Yeshua's view seems acceptable during the weekday because there you could say that you do require the additional 1/5 to be brought in order to satisfy the requirement. Mid'amar nir'in divrei Rabbi Eliezer b'Shabbat. But since he says it would appear that the words of Rabbi Eliezer on Shabbat are appropriate, miklal the pligi afilu b'chol, which would seem to imply, right, that Rabbi Eliezer and okay, and Rabbi Yeshua disagreed even on the topic of the weekday. Mid'amar nir'in divrei Rabbi Yeshua b'chol. And since he said it would appear that Rabbi Yehoshua's viewpoint was appropriate for weekdays, miklal the pligei afilu b'Shabbat, this would seem to imply that their machloket also included the issue of Shabbat as well. My love, isn't it we're going to say as follows? Bahas varaka mipligei, that this is what they were arguing about. The Rabbi Eliezer savar chomesh lo ma'akev, that Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion that the addition of the 1/5 is not detrimental to the satisfaction of the sanctification of the Maaser Sheni, right? Rabbi Yeshua savar chomesh ma'akev, but Rabbi Yeshua does hold that lack of payment of the 1/5 is going to be detrimental to desanctifying your Maaser Sheni and eating. Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa as follows. No, the Kuli Alma Chumash Lo Ma'akev. No, he claims, Rav Papa, that the addition of the 1/5 is not detrimental. It doesn't hold back. V'hachaba kaishinan, the pshiuta kemiflagei. But here, what they're talking about is really an issue of a negligence. That's what they're arguing about. Namely, Mar Savar Chayshinan Pshuta, that one master holds that we suspect the possibility of negligence. Umar Savar Lo Chayshinan Pshuta, and the other master holds that we don't suspect the possibility of negligence. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, Hakomodim Behektish Shechileh. No, says Rabbi Yochanan, we see that in regards to something that is hekdesh, where we demand the payment, and we're going to see that in a moment.
Where when he redeems it, he has to add
Okay.
a gift.
All right, we're going to see it in a second, right? That Rav Yochanan says everybody agrees that if you take something and you've made it sanctified, okay, and then what happens? And you want to desanctify it. What happens then? Ho'il v'gazlarim tovino tobashuk. Okay, since the temple treasurer grabs you in the marketplace and makes sure that you pay up, okay, immediately in that situation, right? Okay, so maybe the same is going to apply to the example of Maser Sheni. Okay, that you've got to pay up that. Well, we're going to get to that in a second. Right,
The extra gift.
right, right. Okay, all right. I, what I saw was that it's fairly, I mean, right? Ubehekdesh lo pligi. And we say regarding hekdesh, they don't argue. Right? Vahatanya. But isn't it taught elsewhere in a Braita? Natan et keren velo natan et chomesh. That if one pays or gives the principal and not the fifth, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, chilel v'chachamim omrim lo chilel. That according to Rabbi Eliezer, the item is desanctified, but the sages say no, it's not. Amar Rebbe, says Rebbe, near in divrei Rabbi Eliezer behekdesh, that it's clear that the view of Rabbi Eliezer seems justified in regards to something that's hekdesh, because we can argue again that the gizbar is there and make sure that the item is paid, right? Uvedivrei chachamim b'maaser, but we're going to say that it's the view of the rabbis that apply to maaser sheni in this case. Midamar near in divrei Rabbi Eliezer behekdesh, since we see, excuse me, that it says the words of Rabbi Eliezer regarding hekdesh, miklal the paliga fila b'maser. This must imply that they also have an argument regarding maser sheni. Midikamar nirin divrei chachamim b'maser, since it seems that he says applies the sages regarding maser sheni, miklal de'inhu pligi afilu behekdesh, which would seem to imply that their machloket also is focused on hekdesh as well. That everybody accepted that. That's not the case. Right? Ela, but rather, itmar hachiyut. But if it was said, this is how it was said. Okay, in other words, coming back now to the fact that that story challenges Rabbi Yochanan's. Right, we've said, Hakol modim b'Shabbat behekdesh shechilel. Okay, everyone is in agreement that regarding Shabbat, if it's something that's been hekdesh, it is then desanctified. Okay, why? Why? Because you don't have. In other words, if we're assuming that you don't demand the extra payment, no requirement of additional payment on Shabbat. That was the parallel we just raised with Maser Sheni. It may be the same parallel in this case. That's Chada 15. Right? But on the one hand, it's written, the Karata the Shabbat One. Right? And why? That's one reason that they don't require the extra payment on Shabbat. Why? It should be a pleasure for you, the Shabbos. Okay? And it's not a pleasure to have to put out extra money. Right? Va'od, and furthermore. Right. Okay. So that, and a further answer, O'il v'gazbarin tovin or tobashot. And the other is that the temple treasurer is on top of you right away. You make sure you pay it up eventually. Okay? Okay. Amar, right? They were the ones who had to collect past dues, I guess. Right? All right. Amar Rabbi Rami Bar Chavi. Okay? Hare Amru Hakishi no Mitchalel al Hakarka. But there are those who say that something that has been sanctified cannot be desanctified based on land. Durach, right? Why? Durachamana Amar, as we find in the Torah that it's pasuk, v'natan hakesef v'kam lo, right? So it seems to imply from the pasuk that it's got to be something that tangible, money. Okay, chumsho mahu sheyitchalel al karkaka. But if that's if we accept that for
Care.
right, for the Karen, exactly. What about the Chomesh? Could that be desanctified onto late? Is the question. Truma eina mishtelemet ela min hachul. We know, if we're going to make a parallel for a moment between Maser Sheni and Truma, okay, that what happens, okay, that in order to fulfill any Truma that's lacking, okay, if somebody, they have to take it from Chulin, right? They have to take it because it belongs really to the Kohen. So they have to take the Chulin, which hasn't been separated yet. Okay, and then from that they could separate Truma and then give that to the Kohen. Okay? Derachamana Amar v'natan leKohen et Kodesh. Right, based on the pasuk. Davar hara'ui liyot Kodesh. It must be something then that's worthy to become sanctified.
Something that's true and knowledge will become.
Exactly. That will be ultimately become chumsha. Mahu sheyishtalem shalom min hakulin. So we ask the same question now. What about the chomesh? What about the 1/5? Could we say there that it would be ultimately fulfilled? Okay, from chulin. It must be fulfilled. Maaser ein mitchalel al ha'asimon. But we learned something else, namely that the Maaser Sheni cannot become desanctified on an unminted coin, on a slug. It's got to be on a real money. Okay? Derachamana Amar, v'tzarta hakesef b'yadech, says the pasuk. Okay? Namely, the Rabbot kol davar sheyesh alav tzura, that the money must have some sort of image or something on it to indicate that it's coinage that is in circulation. Okay? What happens? Chumsho, mahu sheitchalel al ha'asimon. So we naturally ask the following question. What about the 1/5? Could it be then desanctified onto that kind of a coin? Okay? Or a slug. Right? At Galgel Milta Umata the Kamidaraba. The question was not immediately answered. And so there it rolled around till it got to a discussion in front of Rav. Amarlo, and he said to him, Amar Kra. Okay, we have a pasuk that says, right, clearly, Alav. Okay, namely, the Rabbot Chumsho Kimoto. Okay, implying that because it says on it, that must apply also, okay, to the Chomesh, okay, and it must be redeemed in a similar manner to that of the Karen. So if we say the Karen can only be redeemed, okay, or desanctified, right, based on valid money, likewise the Chomesh also.
Also has to be the
Okay. Amar Ravina, says Ravina as follows. Af ananami tanina. So we also teach it in the following way. Agonev truma velo achla, one who steals truma but doesn't eat it, mishalem tashlume kefil. They must pay double, right? Demei truma, okay, the value of the truma. Okay, and remember, truma always cost actually a little less than the going price of other produce because there was a limited market for the truma. It only went to Kohan, right? Achla. But if they ate it, mishalem shnei karnayim v'chomesh keren v'chomesh menachulin. Okay, keren demei truma. But if they did eat it, what happens? They have to pay twice the principal and the 1/5 of the principal, okay, and 1/5 of chulin, right? Because it's got to go back to the Kohen. And it's got to be based on on the price, the value of the truma. Shmamina. And that's what we learned from you. Okay? So we're now going to top of the new Amud. We're going to get to a point where the Mishnah, the Gemara tells us, Shmamina, what do we learn from this? Chumsho kmoto. Okay, that the payment of the chumash of the 1/5 has to be similar to that of the keren. And since we say keren cannot be redeemed based on property, the same thing applies to the chumash, right? Okay, shmami. Amar Rava, says Rava as follows. Gabe gezel kativ. Okay, we're going to see a nice little drasha here. Okay, regarding, since we gave the example of stolen truma, he's going to give us how do we know that stolen truma also has the requirement to pay a fifth. Okay, and if you didn't do that, you got to pay a fifth on that fifth, and so on. So the Gemara now tells us, Rava gave the following: Gabe gezel kativ chamishito. Okay, that's the language that they use. A fifth part, right? Utnan, and we learn Natan lo et keren, v'nishba lo al hachomish. If somebody paid the principal and took a vow on the 1/5,
You didn't know it.
okay, right? Hare ze mosif chomish al chomish ad sheyitma'et hakeren pachot mishava pruta. Okay, that he could then, okay, if he lied about that vow, he would have to pay a fifth on top of the fifth of the keren. Okay, until he reduced the principal to a significant amount. Okay, gabe truma kativ. Why? How do we know that this additional 1/5 is to be included? Why? Because regarding gezel of truma, we said it's written, Ish ki yochal kodesh bishgagav, v'yosef hamishitav alav. There's our word alav on it that we used earlier, right, to show that it's not on land. But notice it says vayah, right, vav, yosef hamishitav. What do we do? Ha'ochel truma b'shogeg, according to the pasuk, mishalem keren v'chomesh. Okay, by mistake, all right, eating truma, the zar, okay, or the non-kohen, right, would have to, all right, pay, right, the keren, and the chomesh would pay principal and 1/5. Echad ha'ochel ve'echad ha'shoteh, whether it was the fact that he drank it, ate it, or he drank it, ve'echad hasach, or he used truma, oil, okay, to anoint, right? Vechad truma tahora, regardless if it was truma that was pure. Vechad truma tameya, or even regard that if it's truma that is impure. Mishalem chumsha v'chumsha de chumsha. He must pay the 1/5 on the keren, and then a fifth on that fifth. Right? Ve'ilu gabe maaser. But in regards to maaser, lo michtav kativ. It's not written that way. Velo mitnatana, and there's no Mishnah, okay, that teaches that. Velo ibuye ibayelan, and no question that's even asked about it, right? Okay, gabe hekdesh, in regards to hekdesh kativ, what do we have there? Okay, ve'im hamakdish yigael, ed beito, v'yasaf hamishit kesef. Okay. Again, notice the word vayasaf and then chamishi. Okay. Add to the value. Tnan. And there we have a Mishnah that tells us hapodeh et hakadsho mosif chomesh chumshatana. One who redeems the sanctified item has to add 1/5. Okay. And that's what was taught. Chumsha de chumsha lo tanan. But a fifth on top of another fifth is not taught in the Mishnah. Why is that the case? Gabi Truma Kativ, with regards to Truma, it's written Vayasa. Okay, you notice the little
Kafar.
all right, exactly. Gabe Kodesh Nami Hakativ Vyasa. Regarding Hekdesh, Kodesh, it's also written in the Pasuk Vyasa. Odilma, or perhaps Gabe Truma Kativ Vyasa. We have the Pasuk regarding Truma that has the Vyasa from the Vav. All right. Isha Katle Levav Vyasa. If you take the Vav of the word Vyasaf and it is added, I'm going to translate it that way. Okay, right? Well, what did you happens? Vishadita le al chamishito, and you place this or add it on to the word chamishito. Havale, what do you get? Chamishitav. All right, that's the fifth of the fifth. Uh-huh. All right. God, that's right. Gabe hekdesh. Right? God, that's what drasha is. Gabe hekdesh, in regards to hekdesh, kativ v'yasaf chamishit. But there, it only has the v'yasaf and chamishit. Afagav v'chishakat le'levav v'yasif. Even were you to take and try the same drasha, okay, right, of taking the vav and add it to chamishit, what would you get? V'shatita le al chamishit, and you add it to shayt. So, havale chamishito, you'd only get 1/5, right? That would be the case. All right, so that would be by that drasha, we can see why he says in one case it's a fifth on top of a fifth, in the other case it's just 1/5. All right. Vatepukle, the havale hekdesheni. Okay, so let's derive this based on the idea of taking second kodesh. Okay, Va'amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, who says, a hekdesh rishon mosif chomesh, al hekdesh sheni ein mosif chomesh. Okay, he holds Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi that on the first redemption of the first item that's sanctified, yes, you add a fifth, but a second one you do not beat. Amar le Rav Papi, the Rabbina. And so Rav Papi says to Rabbina, Hachi Amar Rav. But this is what Rabbah was telling us. Chomesh ketchilat hekdesh dami. Okay, that the fifth really comes with the first aspect of sanctification. That's how we make that's where the money is applied. Okay? Mai havela. So what is the halacha? What do we learn from all this? Okay, namely the following. Amar Rav Tivyomi Mishmei da Abai, in the name of Abai. Amar Kra. We've got our pasuk. Yosef chamishit kesef erkecha. It says you add a fifth of money to its value. Makish chumsho lekesef erko. We make an association between the 1/5 and the money, the financial value. All right. Ma kesef erko, the same way, okay, that the money has a certain value. Mosif chomesh, af kesef kumsho, nami mosif chomesh. Okay, so there too so the same way that it has a certain value, we add 1/5, okay, to the money of that 1/5 to make it of a financial value. Okay? We'll go just a little bit more. Gufa, let's come back to what we saw earlier in our Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, he said as follows, Al hekdesh rishon mosif chomesh, on the first sanctification. We add a fifth. Val hekdesh sheni ein mosif chomesh. We don't add it. Okay? Amar Rava, says Rava there. My time of the Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, what was his thinking? Amar Kra. He based it on the following pasuk. Im hamakdish yigael et beito. Okay? If one, right, who sanctified his home wants to redeem it. Hamakdish, okay, that applies to one who had sanctified it. Velo hamatis, and not simply one who was associated with it. Okay, and I was doing something, attaching something to something else that's pre-existing sanctity. Okay, in other words, to the new item, yes, but to something that already has sanctity, that's not doesn't apply. Okay, Tani Tanakame, the Rav Ela. Okay, and another Tana taught in the name of Rav Elazar. Ve'im behema hatmeya upada be'erkitim. If it is an animal, okay, that becomes tamei and you're redeeming it for its value, ma behema tmeya miuchedet shetchilata hekdesh v'kula l'shamayim. Whereas the animal that became tamei was initially sanctified, okay, and dedicated to heaven. Uma'olin ba, and it's possible for the issue of its misuse, right? Afkol shetchilata hekdesh. So likewise, anything which was initially sanctified earlier, vikula l'shamayim, and it's designated for heaven, mo'elin ba. So likewise, it's possible to be guilty of misappropriation, of misuse of it. Amar le Rabbi Elazar Latan. Okay, so Rabbi Elazar says to him as follows: Bishlema kula l'shamayim. That may be appropriate if we say it was all designated for heaven. Lema ute kodshim kalin, which limits, okay, those offerings that are of a lesser sanctity. Okay, like shlomim, for example, okay, which was really eaten by people as well. Okay, kevan de itlaho lebaalim begavayu, because the owners have I'm going to say, a portion in it. They have a share in it. Lead, right? Lead baho me'ila, so they don't have any concern or question or issue of misappropriation. Ella chilat hekdesh. If we're going to use a term primary sanctity or early or original sanctity, right? Lema'ute mai, to exclude what? Chilat hekdesh, hu de'it be'me'ila. Something with its initial sanctity, there is misappropriation. Sof hekdesh lit be'me'ila. Do we say then that something that becomes sanctified later does not have me'ila? Dilma ve'inyan chomesh. Perhaps we're talking here about the 1/5 is what we're saying. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, and that seems to follow the view of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. And yes, he says, Hachi ka'amina. Okay, that's what I had intended. That's what I knew. And we'll stop right there.
I'm facing temptation today. I'm pretending to be a before, but it's only a pretense.